The anime recently reminded us of the female Law figure that could be considered the inspiration behind Law canonically being turned into a woman as a result of Dakyu's Devil Fruit powers. And today, thanks to this week's cover, we are also reminded of another Law figure that depicts him as a snow leopard. Pretty curious as to what it was that Beppo was thinking of doing with that baseball bat. It reminds me of the SBS backstory of Little Law saving Beppo from Shachi and Penguin. As a consequence for them engaging in animal cruelty, Law beats the two of them up, and they soon decide to change their ways and join Law instead. And speaking of Beppo and Law, I was actually surprised to learn that Lafitte was not with Katarina and that her partner was Van Ogre instead, because the last time we saw Van Ogre, it was when Beppo went Sulong to help Law escape, and that was back in chapter 1081. And then the chapter where we saw the Blackbeard pirate ship approaching Egghead was actually 1079. So I guess that means that Katarina was just sort of there by herself for a bit, just staring at her watch, waiting for Van Ogre to show up. You can pretty much sense Oda's enthusiasm right from the start of the chapter, because we know that one of Oda's biggest inspirations was the anime of Vicky the Viking. So I can imagine that he'd been wanting to draw that panel of the giants making landfall and busting through the marine ships for a very long time now. The action-adventure feel, which is a core component of One Piece, is palpable in those opening pages. We get a live Usopp reaction to the Giants' arrival. Obviously, Chopper only knows Oimo and Kashi from Enies Lobby and Water 7, because he hadn't joined the crew yet in Little Garden, so he doesn't know Dory or Boggy yet. And so we get a brief reminder of the arc's conflict, and there's a little funny drawing of Vivi there as well. And speaking of Pinocchio-related things, Vegapunk was giving me major Geppetto vibes in this chapter. Atlas carrying Kuma and Frankie carrying Bonnie begin heading towards the northeast port, which means that they'll also be running into the giants soon. They just kind of leave Vegapunk behind under the protection of Luffy and Sanji. And I gotta say that the composition of that panel where we see Kizaru's coat from the back is not only reminiscent of other panels that we've seen with the Admirals. In fact, I think the only one missing a panel with that type of composition is Fujitora at this point. But Kizaru's panel is kind of strange because on one hand, you have Sanji looking really smooth, lighting his cigarette. Then you have Luffy acting like a little kid, bouncing up and down. And then you have Vegapunk on the ground, lying in a puddle of his own blood. So there are a lot of different elements in that panel that evoke different types of feelings. So I guess you could say that my reaction to that panel is pretty unclear, which suits Kizaru perfectly, since that's his type of justice. I think it's crazy how one chapter can do such a great job of making the reader realize just the scope of the upcoming final conflict in One Piece. We finally now know what Caribou meant when he spoke about talking to a certain someone all those years ago. And yeah, there was some speculation about the possibility of it being Blackbeard, but the thing is that Caribou being a Teach fanboy balances out Bartolomeo being a Luffy fanboy. That makes so much sense, and it was right in front of my face, and I never thought about that. So in that sense, I thought it was a great surprise that both Blackbeard and Luffy now each have a supportive fanboy on their side. Now, from a story standpoint, in addition to a possible fight of the fanboys between the two, the implications of Caribou joining the Blackbeard Pirates with the knowledge that he has are absolutely insane. Like, that kind of information in the wrong hands is the stuff that could trigger the One Piece World War that Whitebeard foreshadowed all the way back in Marineford.
We also learned from Edison that this is already a major news story. He says, it's a government attack. Of course it'll be in the news by the next day. So the fact that it's already in the papers, the fact that Caribou seems to be joining the Blackbeard Pirates, and the fact that Caribou is Bartolomeo's counterpart gets me to think that it's only a matter of time before the Straw Hat Grand Fleet shows up in the main story. It's definitely not a coincidence that the territories that have been declared to be under Luffy's protection are Wano and Fishman Island, which have an ancient weapon each. So Yonko Luffy's gonna have to mobilize the Straw Hat Grand Fleet to protect his territories. I mean, Wano's not that far away, so maybe the crew can stop by at some point to pick up Yamato and to prevent Teach from destroying the borders with a shockwave to unleash Pluton. But Fishman Island is too far away from where the crew is now, so Luffy's definitely gonna have to send some people over there.
For the most part, I think it's great to see the Straw Hats focusing on their own individual tasks, all of which will serve a purpose in favor of the group's goal. After having created a runway of ice, Brook is with Lilith drinking some tea, and apparently the ship is going to crash into the laser dome if they don't do anything to change its course. So I was wondering if Lilith maybe could use her bubble gun to create bubbles and either try to cushion the Sunny enough so that it slows down, or change its direction. Jinbei's on his way to find Zoro, who for some reason has decided to stop using 3 swords against Lucci. Plus, Lucci seems to not be coating his claws in armament hockey, so that's pretty weird too. Now my hope for the resolution of this fight is that we end up getting some info or reveal about what Zoro experienced in Wano with the Grim Reaper, or what the requirements are for forging a black blade. I think that as readers we should come out of this fight having learned something new. So as a bare minimum, I'm expecting Zoro to use a brand new two-sword style attack. So yeah, something new here, just like we've seen Luffy pull out some new moves. He's also giving Bonnie pointers on how to use her Nika-like future powers, so we can expect Bonnie using a pretty strong Nika-like attack in the near future. She'll probably land it against Saturn just to make up for her last attempt. And that leads me to Sanji, who blocks Kizaru's light beam, and you can see a spark coming out of the air, so I don't know if that's him sort of channeling the electric energy from some kind of momentary Ifrit Jamba, because we have seen sparks come out of Ifrit before. And we also see that his eyebrow is inverted to match the pattern of his siblings. And so the fact that inverted eyebrow Sanji is no joke is supported even further now by Franky and Kizaru's reactions. Another very important part of this is his dialogue. It's not the first time that Sanji has said something similar to this. In Wano, he mentions that the heat of his passion surpasses the temperature of flame. And then again in Egghead, when he tanks one of S-Shark's punches to the face, he says, "What would you know about the power of love?"
It goes back to the SBS section of volume 44, where Oda is asked why Diablo Jamba doesn't burn Sanji. And Oda says, it's because his heart was burning way hotter. So in the official translation, Sanji tells Kizaru that love is stronger than light. And I think the reason for why Oda has been highlighting that theme of love a lot more recently is because this is all leading up to a fight between the Straw Hat crew and the Blackbeard Pirates. And we know that Pudding was captured by the Blackbeard Pirates. So ultimately, this whole thing is leading up to a Sanji power-up. He's going to regain the memories that he lost in Whole Cake Island. He's going to find out what happened to Pudding, and I would not want to be on the other side of that. At the same time though, due to Oda always wanting to make Luffy outshine everybody else, whatever fire power-up Sanji gets, Luffy's gonna get one that's better and stronger. We don't really know why Nico is known as the sun god, but Lilith says that fire is a very valuable power and source of energy, and that she would ultimately want to create a flame that doesn't go out, just like the sun. So I think that's foreshadowing Luffy's power up as well. That being said, I still wouldn't want to be the guy who's in charge of holding Pudding hostage. I really do wonder who Sanji's matchup in the Blackbeard Pirates is gonna end up being.
Some people think that it's going to be Aokiji because of the fire versus ice thing, plus he also took part in Pudding's kidnapping. I honestly just think that Kuzan has a hidden agenda and is secretly waiting for the right time to betray Blackbeard. By the way, though, I agree that Van Ogre one-shotting Cracker's biscuits in the anime does open up a bag of questions with possible inconsistent answers. I thought the scene was both hype and pretty enjoyable, so even though I know that the sequence wasn't in the manga's cover story, and that it took Luffy activating Gear 4th to break through the biscuits when he was in Whole Cake, and that within the same episode we see John Bart tank a bullet from Van Ogre as well, I really did appreciate the work that went into the action sequence, so a part of my brain is just like,
I'm going to allow that.
Can't wait for Usopp versus Van Ogre now. Holy that blast was Gear 4th Luffy level. Run, Usopp, run. These anime-only feats are crazy. Now, if you wanted to justify it, I guess you could say that Aokiji making the temperature drop with his ice powers made the biscuits weaker. But anyway, I thought it was a nice touch that each time Cracker claps to summon his biscuit soldiers, we get 3 different impact frames with a face for each one of them. And on that note, I also noticed that in the same episode, just as Teach is about to use an attack of the Gura Gura no Mi, we get an impact frame sort of splitting his silhouette in 2. Now, whether that's just referring to the fact that he has 2 double fruits, or whether it's sort of referencing the idea that he's more than one person, I just thought the impact frame was worth noting. Additionally, last night's anime episode added a scene where Bonnie yells out, "Don't do it!" just as Luffy, Jinbei, and Chopper are about to fight the police pacifista. And so Bonnie changes their ages, and the pacifista stops his attack and ends up walking away. And so I thought the ambiguity of that scene was pretty cool, because you don't really know if the pacifista stopped because he doesn't recognize his targets anymore due to them being different ages, or if the scene is actually supposed to be hinting at the fact that Bonnie has full control over all of her father's clones. Now, when it comes to Katarina Devon touching Saturn to be able to replicate his appearance, I can only think of 2 possible reasons for why she would do that. The first is that ever since Amazon Lily, Teach has been interested in getting control of the Seraphim, so he sent 2 crew members to try and capture the ones at Egghead. It's worth mentioning that the last time we saw the Seraphim, they were actually trapped in bubbles, so taking them away wouldn't be that difficult. So maybe Katarina knows that by transforming into Saturn, she can gain control of the Seraphim given his place in the hierarchy of authority. Still wondering if Bonnie's authority over Esper could somehow challenge that, by the way. And then the second reason reason for why Devon would want to turn into Saturn might be related to what Blackbeard said about wanting to have Hashinosu be recognized by the world government as a country, because we heard from Sengoku that Xebec wanted to become king of the world, so thanks to Van Ogre's claim, it's now more obvious than ever that Teach is following in Xebec's footsteps. So maybe Katarina turning into the godhead of science and defense might allow Blackbeard some kind of special command or access when it comes to the Mother Flame weapon. As I explained in this video here, I have reasons to believe that the God Valley incident had less to do with saving slaves and a lot more to do with something related to Uranus. And I know some fans think that the reason why Saturn already knows about Teach's lineage is because he was informed by this figure here, who we assume to be Shanks. But given that we know that Saturn was present at God's Valley that fateful day at the same time as Rox, if it turns out that Rox is biologically related to Teach, then that could mean that Saturn already knew about Teach being special from a very long time ago. Additionally, with Caribou about to spill the beans on the locations of both Pluton and Poseidon, the only ancient weapon that Blackbeard would lack information on would be Uranus. So in my mind, either Teach already knows something about Uranus because of his connection to Xebec and Xebec's connection to God's Valley, or the weapon is related to Elbaf and the Giants, and he'll be making a move to get access to it pretty soon, since that's where a lot of the pieces on the board appear to be moving towards anyway. And I just noticed that those two ideas are not mutually exclusive. Another possible reason for why Saturn already knows about Teach being special is that we know that he was doing experiments on how to feed babies devil fruits without them actually consuming the fruit directly. So Blackbeard's weird body that allows him to have more than one devil fruit power could have been a result of a similar type of experimentation. The way the story is unfolding though, Oda has made it a point to show that people having two powers isn't all that impossible anymore, because not only do we see it in Wano with Kaido making the comment that Luffy appears to show features of both a Zoan and a Paramecia, but we also see it with the character of Queen, who is technically an ancient Zoan, but thanks to the power of science, he can also showcase powers that were once exclusive to the Sukesuke no Mi / Clear fruit.
Now going back to Van Ogre very quick, he does say in this chapter that he's sort of getting used to his powers still, so he doesn't teleport directly to the ship, which is a way of Oda writing it so that they can run into Caribou by the end. But I also wonder if that's going to end up playing a role during the Usopp fight. By the way, shout out to Mr. Red King for getting what I would call an extended cameo in this chapter, because, you know, Oda just loves to create like these designs for the Vice Admirals, but for the most part, he doesn't really use them all that much. I mean, there are some exceptions, obviously, like Garp and Smoker. Where is Smoker, by the way? Anyway, I want to finalize this by bringing something up that Greg wrote a column about. If you don't know who Greg is, he's Ochimuso108 on Twitter. He knows Oda personally. He lives in Japan. And so sometimes he writes these official columns. And so one of the things that he pointed out recently was that in Fishman Island, you know how Luffy has to destroy the Noah because the Ark is going to fall on the island and it's going to crash and kill everybody. So Luffy starts pummeling it, but then Shidahoshi summons the Sea Kings to take care of the situation. And so after that, there's a panel where the Sea Kings are evaluating the damage on the Ark, and they're like, man, like, could this even be fixed at this point? And one of them says, our only hope is the skills of that clan, but times have changed. In addition, something that Greg points out in his column as well is how massive Dorian Broggy's ship has to be in order to be able to carry that many giants on board. Now, I know I'm going to be sounding like a broken record at this point, but I really do believe that the Atom Tree is in Elbaf. I think the anime people were told to remove the comment from Usopp linking the Eve Tree to the Atom Tree because they felt it was too much of a hint. Plus, if we go back to Big Mom's flashback, we literally see giants carrying around these giant tree trunks as if they were in the middle of building something. So just like the Kazuki clan were a family of stonemasons, right? They were craftsmen, they worked stone, and they created the poneglyphs. I believe that there's a clan or a family of giants in Elbaf that are woodworkers or carpenters or essentially lumberjacks, right? A clan of giants, a family of giants that have special skills when it comes to wood. So again, just like the Kazuki clan created the poneglyphs, I'm pretty sure that that ancient family of giants was responsible for creating the Noah Ark. And so maybe the Sea Kings already took the Ark to Elbaf, and maybe it's being repaired in Elbaf as we speak. Additionally, you might have already heard the theory that what inspired Enel to create the Ark Maxim was that he actually saw Uranus in real life, and so he was inspired by Uranus. So the Ark Maxim is sort of like a small little replica of what Uranus actually is. And it would technically fit for the god of the sky to be this giant wooden flying ark. It kind of goes back to what Big Mom said about how if the marriage between Loki and Lola had gone through, she would already be king of the pirates. So maybe Loki's family were the wood craftsmen. They might have been the ones who created Noah. And so with Big Mom marrying Lola off to Loki, Big Mom was going to be like, Lola, that kid Loki likes you, so get him to build me an ancient weapon. Maybe once Pluton and Uranus's designs are revealed, it'll turn out that like, oh, the giants build those weapons. Or at least one of them. I mean, Poseidon is technically a giant mermaid, so it would fit. That is going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Unfortunately, next week, I have to go to a mandatory training for work, so I won't have enough time to record, edit, and upload a video. But I will be back the week after that, no matter if there's a chapter or not. So not next Sunday, but the Sunday after that. Yeah, I'll have a video for you guys. The training is mandatory, so unless I want to lose my job, I don't really have that much of a say. So thank you for understanding, and thank you for all of your supportive, kind comments in my last video regarding the family matter that I brought up there as well. Really, words are not enough to thank you guys, but thank you. Take care. Hope you have a great week. I'll catch you in 2. Catch you guys later. Bye.